People didn't want to think about it. But in 2015, The New Yorker published an article claiming that the coming major earthquake in our region of North America will spell the worst natural disaster in the history of the continent. The New Yorker nonetheless showed up, warning that anything inside and unprotected may jolt across the floor or collapse as soon as the shaking starts. Without being anchored to their foundations, houses will fall off. Over 3,000 of the buildings that will fall or be jeopardized are schools, numbering at around 1 million in total, along with 1/3 of all fire stations, half of all police stations, and 2/3 of all hospitals, 50% of all highway bridges, 2/3 of all railroads, and airports will also be affected. It will cause landslides all throughout the area as a result of the earthquake. The sloshing, sliding, and shaking will result in fires, flooding, pipe breaks, dam breaches, and hazardous material releases. The real carnage will start when the wave shows up. Despite seeming unbroken and continuous, the world as we know it is actually separated into parts. Geologists refer to these fragments as plates, but it is useless for common people to think of them in that way because one plate spans a distance of about 60 miles from its bottom to its top. They resemble blocks more. The block that Seattle is located on, also known as the North American block, ends to the east in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and to the west less than 150 miles off our coast. The relatively smaller Juan de Fuca block is located just to the west. These blocks appear to be being drawn toward one another by implacable forces. Something must give since they are getting in each other's way. And it frequently does. What will occur the next time something gives at these plates is described in the New Yorker article. It clarifies what it means for all hell to break loose as a result of it. However, if you reside in Seattle, you can find comfort in the knowledge that the precipitating events will take place roughly 175 miles to the west and deep underground, which is a sufficient distance to lessen their worst consequences. The strong earthquake and tsunami inundation that will hit the Washington and Oregon coasts will not be as severe as those that will hit Seattle. However, Seattle will be in a horrible way when the shaking stops and the sea returns to normal. But it's the New Yorker earthquake, a regional catastrophe that will also destroy thousands of square miles around our metropolis. When it happens, as it must, the one we haven't shown any interest in will likely be known as the Seattle Quake or the Great Seattle Quake for obvious reasons. The New Yorker variety, also known as megathrust earthquakes, has been responsible for all 10 of the greatest earthquakes in recorded history between 2012 and the present. The precipitating events took place deep beneath the bottom in each instance. Under the Indian Ocean, one earthquake began, and beneath the Sea of Okhotsk, another. The 8 other ones all got their start below the Pacific. These 10 earthquakes resulted in a total of 137 fatalities. If you think that number is too low, keep in mind that the greatest earthquake of 2011, a megathrust, claimed nearly 20,000 lives. Why did one quake kill so many more people than the others? The 10 greatest earthquakes in the past 10 years were so far away from the Earth's surface that, by the time their impacts reached populated areas, they were weak enough to prevent a significant number of fatalities. The Great East Japan earthquake of 2011 began far from land as well, yet it too had a devastating tsunami as a result of its aftershocks. A tsunami plays a crucial role in a quake's ability to kill when it starts in an area where the blocks of the Earth are colliding. There may not be many fatalities if the earthquake doesn't produce one of significance. The number of fatalities may be substantial if it does cause a significant wave. This is what occurred in 2004. When an earthquake that originated deep beneath the Indian Ocean killed more than 225,000 people across 14 countries. Seattle residents can be assured that Puget Sound won't be agitated by the next coastal northwest megathrust earthquake the way the Pacific was by the Great East Japan or Indian Ocean quakes. Many people will suffer, and there will undoubtedly be some fatalities, but there won't be any catastrophic lethality. It goes without saying that we don't want to ignore the caution the New Yorker issued, because of the horrors it will bring as well as the possibility that it could occur soon. The inevitable megathrust earthquake it predicts is worthy of our fear. About once every 500 years, earthquakes of this kind strike our region. The most recent one took place 322 years ago, while the one before that took place roughly 1,300 years ago. If you are adamantly a cup-half-full person, you can choose to concentrate on the fact that around 1,000 years separated the two. It may be discouraging for everyone else to learn that there was a 320-year gap between the earthquake that occurred 1,300 years ago and the one that came before it. Once more, the next significant megathrust quake in this area will originate deep beneath the Pacific bottom, but the next significant quake in the area that is referred to as the Seattle Fault Zone will start shallowly underneath the city. The magnitude of the megathrust earthquake will be 9. The Seattle earthquake will be closer to 7, despite the fact that, according to the math, a 9.0 is more than 1,000 times more powerful than a 7.0. Don't let your interpretation of those scale numbers give you false hope. In Haiti, a 7.0 earthquake in 2010 claimed the lives of almost 300,000 people. 6 miles below the surface is where that one came from. Port-au-Prince, a city approximately the size of Seattle, was 16 miles from the epicenter. Seismologists estimate that there is a 14% chance that a 9.0 earthquake may strike the Pacific Northwest coast in the next 50 years. You might decide to place a wager against it based on those odds. They are not that bad, after all. Approximately the same as an NFL kicker missing a field goal attempt from 37 yards out. On the other hand, a Donald Trump victory over Hillary Clinton was associated with roughly the same odds, 15% as predicted by the New York Times on Election Day morning, 2016. In the next 50 years, there is a 5% chance of a 6.5 earthquake on the Seattle Fault Zone. You may wager against it by accepting those odds as well, and by betting against it, we imply that you haven't made any preparations. Most individuals are shocked whenever an earthquake occurs. The Juan de Fuca block revolves like a cylinder. It seeks to grind through the neighboring North American block as it curves eastward on its descending arc. Under the Cascade Range, where extreme pressures result in the formation of volcanic peaks like St. Helens, Baker, and Rainier, is the zone of interpenetration of the blocks. More importantly, however, the leading edge of the North American block, driven west, carves debris of the sinking Juan de Fuca block and piles it as rubble, mixed with a significant amount of debris that has been sliding off the North American block for a long time, all of which are now compressed nearly solid and subject to their own unique set of earthquake-causing forces. This combination contains the Seattle Fault Zone, which, like what is beneath it, is made up of blocks straining against one another. It has a significant fracture immediately south of downtown and another fracture under a string of North Seattle neighborhoods. It is about 40 miles from east to west and 5 miles from north to south. The zone, which is between 2 and 4 miles beneath the surface, is prone to earthquakes like the one that struck Haiti or the 6.9 quake that struck Kobe, Japan, in 1995. Which killed thousands of people and caused more than $100 billion in damage. It turns out that the geologic conditions beneath Seattle are similar to those beneath Kobe. Quakes in the Seattle Fault Zone occur as ruptures. One or both of the blocks will abruptly move along one of its floors or fractures, which is defined as a seam where two blocks are pressing against one another. The energy that is released as a result spreads in all directions but most dramatically tears along the fault itself. Imagine two blocks intersecting in a diagonal direction. Two things can happen when the fault ruptures. The tallest block can be scaled. Alternatively, one can ascend while the other sinks. According to a 2005 Earthquake Engineering Research Institute model for a 6.7 Seattle Fault Zone earthquake, Ground rupture from Harbor Island to Issaquah will be around 6 vertical feet. You may therefore stroll along the wall of a recently opened scarp for around 15 miles if you manage to survive the earthquake and figure out how to cross Lake Washington. And there is more. In addition to the cables and wires that enable internet connections, power, water, sewer, and gas lines will also be severed. Grocery stores will be empty, and hospitals will be overcrowded. Firestorms, hazardous material spills, collapsed bridges, and thousands of landslides are further problems. And so, it makes sense to act now rather than later, because delaying them increases the likelihood that your motivation may wane to nothing. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world. And don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.